December 22nd, 1941, Lingayan Gulf, Philippines. 80,000 Japanese troops wade ashore against scattered resistance. Douglas MacArthur, America's highest-paid general, defender of the Philippines for 6 years, had positioned his entire defense on stopping this exact invasion at the waterline. His beach defense collapsed in 3 days. The fighting retreat to Bataan that would define his legend? Not the plan. An improvisation born from catastrophic failure. December 8, 1941, 3:30 a.m. Manila time, 9 hours after Pearl Harbor, General Douglas MacArthur receives the first reports. Japan has attacked American territory. War has arrived. But MacArthur's forces in the Philippines represent America's largest overseas garrison, 31,000 American troops, 107,000 newly mobilized Philippine Army soldiers, 277 aircraft, including B-17 bombers. On paper, a formidable defense. The plan? War Plan Orange 3. Stop Japanese landings at the beaches, hold the islands, wait for the U.S. Pacific Fleet to arrive with reinforcements. The reality? 9 hours after Pearl Harbor, MacArthur's Air Force, parked in neat rows at Clark Field, gets destroyed on the ground. Half his bombers gone before dropping a single payload. 10 days later, Japanese troops land at multiple points. MacArthur's beach defense, the strategy he'd spent 6 years preparing, disintegrates almost immediately. By December 24th, MacArthur orders a complete reversal. Abandon the beaches, retreat to the Bataan Peninsula, a strategy that hadn't been official American doctrine for 2 years. This wasn't the plan, and the question that would haunt MacArthur's reputation: why was America's most experienced field commander so catastrophically wrong about Japan's capabilities and his own? The answer reveals something uncomfortable about military genius. Sometimes brilliance and self-deception are indistinguishable. Douglas MacArthur, December 1941, 61 years old, 5 decades in uniform, America's most decorated living general. Born 1880, Little Rock Arsenal, Arkansas, son of Lieutenant General Arthur MacArthur, Civil War hero and Medal of Honor recipient, raised on frontier army posts, graduated West Point 1903, first in his class. Highest marks in 25 years. World War I, youngest division commander in the American Expeditionary Force, personally led trench raids, earned 7 Silver Stars, 2 Distinguished Service Crosses. French awarded him the Croix de Guerre. By 1918, already known for 2 things: exceptional tactical courage and an exceptional ego. 1930, Army Chief of Staff at age 50, youngest ever, oversaw military modernization during Depression budget cuts. 1932, ordered the violent eviction of bonus Army veterans from Washington, D.C., a political stain he never fully shed. 1935, President Roosevelt sends him to the Philippines as military advisor to prepare the Commonwealth for independence. Mission: build a Filipino defense force capable of resisting invasion. MacArthur accepts, retires from U.S. Army in 1937 to become Field Marshal of the Philippine Army. Salary: $33,000 annually, plus penthouse suite in Manila Hotel, making him America's highest-paid military figure. But the job reveals a pattern. MacArthur's confidence in his plans exceeds available resources. He promises President Quezon a citizen army of 400,000 trained reservists by 1946. By 1941, he has perhaps 20,000 partially trained troops. July 1941, U.S. President Roosevelt recalls MacArthur to active duty as USA Army Forces Far East, USEFI commander. War with Japan seems inevitable. MacArthur receives emergency reinforcements, modern aircraft, additional troops,
priority shipping, and something more dangerous than weapons, validation of his optimism. November 4th, 1941, 5 weeks before Pearl Harbor, MacArthur cables Army Chief of Staff George Marshall, "The existing alignment and movement of Japanese troops convince me that the present Philippine defense plan is sound. The Philippine garrison is now in the best condition it has ever been. The defense plan: meet Japanese invasion forces at the beaches, destroy them in the surf, hold the islands until the U.S. Pacific Fleet arrives." MacArthur's staff would later describe his mood that autumn: absolute certainty, no defensive pessimism. When subordinates questioned whether Filipino troops could stop battle-hardened Japanese infantry, MacArthur dismissed the concerns. One officer recalled, "The general seemed to believe that his presence, his reputation, his planning would somehow compensate for material deficiencies." Lieutenant General Jonathan Wainwright, MacArthur's second-in-command, wrote in private correspondence, "Doug has convinced himself this can work. I pray he's right." By December 1941, MacArthur had transformed himself from military advisor to theater commander, from defensive planner to aggressive strategist, from cautious professional to man on a mission. He was about to discover the cost of self-convinced genius. The Philippines. 7,000 islands scattered across 115,000 square miles. Luzon, the main northern island, contains Manila, the capital, and Clark Field, America's largest Far East airbase. Geography creates an impossible defense problem. Luzon alone has hundreds of potential invasion beaches. MacArthur cannot defend them all with 138,000 troops. The solution: War Plan Orange 3, revised 1941, attempts a calculated gamble. Beach defense strategy: position troops near likely invasion sites. Stop Japanese forces in the water or immediately after landing. Use Filipino divisions as frontline defenders backed by American artillery. Hold beachheads until Japanese logistics collapse. Air power projection: use B-17 bombers from Clark Field to strike Japanese invasion fleets before they reach shore. Force Japan to commit overwhelming resources they cannot sustain across extended supply lines. Strategic assumption: Japan must invade during the winter monsoon season, December through February, when seas are the roughest. This limits their landing options to major ports and broad beaches. MacArthur can predict and concentrate forces accordingly. The math seemed plausible. 31,000 U.S. Army troops, trained, equipped. 107,000 Philippine Army troops, partially trained, mixed equipment. 277 aircraft, including 35 B-17 heavy bombers. Defensive advantage: entrenched positions, shorter supply lines, home terrain. Against Japanese forces estimated at 50,000 to 80,000 initial invasion troops. Limited air cover, carrier-based aircraft with short range, vulnerable supply lines stretching back to Formosa, Taiwan, and amphibious assault disadvantage. Troops exposed during landing. MacArthur's assessment: any attack will be costly for Japan, possibly prohibitively costly. But this plan represented a radical departure from previous American strategy. War Plan Orange, the official U.S. defense doctrine for the Philippines from 1907 to 1939, had always assumed a different approach. Original strategy: immediately withdraw to the Bataan Peninsula and Corregidor Island at the first sign of invasion. Create a defensive fortress. Hold out for 6 months until the Pacific Fleet fights its way across the ocean. Bataan, a mountainous jungle peninsula 30 miles long, 15 miles wide, anchoring the entrance to Manila Bay. Rugged terrain, limited roads, defensible high ground. Corregidor, a fortress island 2 miles offshore, called the Gibraltar of the East. 1939. MacArthur convinced Washington to abandon this strategy. His argument: withdrawing to Bataan would surrender most of the Philippines without a fight. Psychologically devastating for Filipino morale. Politically catastrophic for America's prestige in Asia. Instead, defend the beaches.
trust the Filipino Army, believe in American air power. War Department Chief of Staff George Marshall approved the change, not because he believed it would work, but because abandoning the islands immediately seemed defeatist. Marshall wrote privately, "We are taking a calculated risk. MacArthur understands the stakes." The calculated risk depended on assumptions MacArthur treated as certainties. Assumption 1. Filipino divisions would stand and fight under sustained Japanese assault. Reality? Most Philippine Army divisions had received 3 to 6 months of training. Some units had never conducted live fire exercises. Officers were often political appointees. Equipment shortages meant some battalions trained with wooden rifles. Assumption 2. American air power would locate and damage Japanese invasion fleets before landing. Reality? B-17s required precise intelligence about enemy positions. Reconnaissance over Japanese-controlled waters was sporadic. Cloud cover in monsoon season limited visibility. Japanese had air superiority from carriers. Post-war evidence revealed Japanese strategy: isolate and destroy American air power immediately, land at multiple points simultaneously, bypass strong resistance, drive inland rapidly. Assume American Filipino forces would be unprepared and uncoordinated. They were correct. Lieutenant Colonel James Collier, MacArthur's chief logistics officer, calculated in late November that Bataan could support 43,000 troops for 6 months if supplies were pre-positioned immediately. MacArthur declined. Moving supplies to Bataan would signal lack of confidence in the beach defense. He said, "We will not need Bataan. The enemy will not reach Manila." By December 8, 1941, Bataan's supply depots contained 10 days of rations. The stage was set for disaster. December 8, 1941, 3:30 a.m. Manila time. Major General Louis Brereton, Far East Air Force Commander, receives word: Pearl Harbor attacked. Japan and United States at war. Brereton immediately calls MacArthur's Chief of Staff, Brigadier General Richard Sutherland. Request: permission to launch preemptive strikes against Japanese airfields on Formosa, 500 miles north. Sutherland's response: wait. The general is conferring. Brereton's diary records 5 calls to MacArthur's headquarters between 4 a.m. and 8 a.m. Each time, wait for orders. MacArthur does not personally respond. 8 a.m., MacArthur's headquarters authorizes reconnaissance flights only. No offensive action. Why the delay? MacArthur later claimed he never received Brereton's request. Sutherland insisted orders were clear. Brereton maintained he was blocked for 4 critical hours. The truth, declassified in 1974, suggests something more troubling. MacArthur froze. War had arrived, and America's most confident general couldn't decide whether to launch offensive operations without explicit authorization from Washington. 11 a.m. B-17s returned from morning reconnaissance. They land at Clark Field to refuel and rearm. 12:45 a.m. Pilots eat lunch. Ground crews service aircraft. Fighters patrol overhead, but at low altitude, conserving fuel. 12:35 p.m. Japanese bombers from Formosa, delayed by morning fog, arrive over Clark Field. The B-17s are parked in neat rows. Pursuit planes lined up wingtip to wingtip, fuel trucks alongside. 53 Japanese bombers drop payloads in perfect conditions. Clear weather, no opposition, stationary targets. 18 B-17s destroyed or damaged beyond repair. 53 P-40s obliterated. Barracks, hangars, fuel depots in flames. American casualties: 80 killed, 150 wounded. Japanese casualties: 7 aircraft damaged, none lost. General Brereton wrote later, "It was the greatest disaster for American air power in history, and it was completely avoidable." By nightfall, December 8th, MacArthur's Air Force, the cornerstone of his beach defense strategy, effectively ceased to exist. Half his bombers gone, fighter strength reduced by 60%, Japanese air superiority established before ground invasion even began. MacArthur's response: public silence, private fury. He relieved no subordinates, conducted no formal investigation.
Instead, he blamed everyone but his own command decisions: insufficient warning from Washington, inadequate air raid procedures, traitorous Filipino sympathizers who allegedly signaled Japanese aircraft. Colonel Charles Willoughby, MacArthur's intelligence chief, recorded, "The general took the Clark Field disaster as a personal offense. He seemed unable to accept that his air strategy had been fundamentally flawed. And now, the beach defense plan, designed around American air superiority, would face Japanese invasion with almost no air cover." December 10th through 20th, 1941. Japanese diversionary landings. Small forces hit northern Luzon, southern Luzon, Mindanao. Each landing draws MacArthur's attention. Each appears potentially decisive. MacArthur shifts reserves north, then south, then north again. His intelligence staff struggles to determine the main assault. December 18th. MacArthur cables Washington. Enemy efforts remain dispersed. Main attack has not developed. Defensive positions holding successfully. Translation: MacArthur still believes his beach defense can work, still believes these are preparatory operations before the real invasion. He's wrong. December 22nd, 1941, 2 a.m., the main invasion begins. Lieutenant General Masaharu Homa's 14th Army launches simultaneous assaults at Lingayan Gulf, northwest Luzon, and Lamon Bay, southeast Luzon. Lingayan Gulf, 43,000 Japanese troops hit beaches defended by the Philippine Army's 11th, 21st, and 71st Divisions. Lamon Bay, 7,000 troops target the 51st Division. MacArthur's plan assumes Filipino divisions will hold for days, inflicting heavy casualties, forcing Japanese to commit reserves piecemeal. Reality unfolds differently. Lingayan Gulf, first day, December 22nd, 0200 hours. The Japanese naval bombardment begins. Destroyers shell beach defenses for 30 minutes. 0245 hours. First wave of Japanese infantry hits shore. 80 landing craft discharge troops across a 10-mile front. 0300 hours. 21st Division, positioned on the northern flank, begins receiving casualties. Japanese artillery more accurate than anticipated. Filipino positions too exposed. 0445 hours. 21st Division's Western Regiment breaks contact. Reports say tactical withdrawal to secondary positions. Reality, panicked retreat. By 0600 hours, a 2-mile gap opens in the defensive line. Division Commander Brigadier General Mateo Capinpin reports troops under sustained fire for the first time. Many officers killed early in engagement. Units lost cohesion. Withdrawal became a rout. 0800 hours. Japanese troops advance inland 3 miles. No organized resistance. MacArthur's headquarters, 60 miles south in Manila, receives fragmentary reports. Communications primitive. Field telephones cut by shelling. Radio equipment scarce. MacArthur orders the 21st Division to counterattack and restore the line. The division no longer exists as a coherent fighting force. Orders never reach surviving units. December 22 to 23. Collapse accelerates. 1200 hours. December 22nd. Japanese troops occupy De Mortis, 6 miles inland. Philippine 11th Division attempts to establish defensive line. Overrun by 1600 hours. 2000 hours. Japanese control coastal highway. Their advance reconnaissance units probe 15 miles inland. December 23rd. 800 hours. Lamon Bay assault, southeast Luzon, goes similarly. Philippine 51st Division holds the 6 hours, then collapses. Japanese advance inland virtually unopposed. MacArthur faces strategic crisis. 2 Japanese forces driving toward Manila from opposite directions. His beach defense has disintegrated. Filipino divisions melting away under first sustained combat. MacArthur's War Diary. December 23rd. Enemy has achieved surprise through speed and coordination of landings. Beach defense strategy compromised by air inferiority and inadequate training of Philippine Army units. Translation: the plan failed. Everything MacArthur promised Washington would work hasn't, and now he must decide. Defend Manila house to house, withdraw to Bataan as the old plan suggested, or attempt some improvised middle course. December 23rd, 1941, 1900 hours. Manila Hotel, MacArthur's headquarters. Emergency Conference. MacArthur, Lieutenant General Wainwright, Luzon Force Commander, Major General George Parker, Southern Luzon Commander, Brigadier General Richard Sutherland, Chief of Staff. The situation: Japanese Lingayan force, 43,000 troops, advancing south at 10 miles per day. Japanese Lamon Bay force, 7,000 troops, advancing northwest toward Manila. Filipino-American forces, scattered, disorganized, communications broken. Manila, undefended city of 700,000 civilians. Wainwright argues, "We cannot defend Manila. We have perhaps 3 days before enemy pincers close. We must declare it an open city and withdraw." MacArthur, where? This is the moment, the decision that will define the Philippines campaign.
MacArthur has 3 options. Option 1, defend Manila street by street, urban combat. High casualties, delayed Japanese advance maybe 1 week. Outcome, destruction of Manila, annihilation of remaining American Filipino forces. Option 2, scatter forces into guerrilla operations across Luzon, wage insurgent warfare, preserve some combat power. Outcome, no unified American command, no fortress to hold, no relief possible. Option 3, execute the old War Plan Orange strategy MacArthur had rejected 2 years earlier. Retreat to Bataan Peninsula and Corregidor Island. Sutherland presents the analysis. Bataan offers defensible terrain, jungle mountains, limited access roads. We can hold perhaps 6 months if supplied properly. Parker interjects, "We have 10 days of supplies in Bataan depots. We'd need to move food, ammunition, medical supplies from Manila while conducting fighting retreat under Japanese air attack." MacArthur's silent for 30 seconds. An officer present recalled, "The general seemed diminished. The confidence that had defined him for months simply absent. He was facing the consequences of his miscalculation." Finally, MacArthur speaks, "We will execute WPO 3, War Plan Orange 3, the Bataan option. The strategy MacArthur had spent 2 years arguing against, but not the full plan." MacArthur improvises. "We will withdraw to Bataan in phases. Manila becomes an open city. Evacuate immediately. All combat forces conduct delaying actions while supplies move to Bataan. We buy time by trading space." 2200 hours, December 23rd. MacArthur issues operational orders. North Luzon Force, Wainwright, fight delaying action southward. Destroy bridges, mine roads. Retreat into Bataan from the north. South Luzon Force, Parker, withdrawal westward around Manila. Cross into Bataan from the south. Manila Garrison, begin immediate evacuation of supplies to Bataan. Priority: food, ammunition, medical supplies, fuel. Timeline: complete withdrawal by January 6, 1942, 14 days. It's an extraordinary military maneuver. 2 corps-sized forces retreating under enemy pressure while funneling through a single 30-mile-wide peninsula. Historical parallels: Dunkirk, Gallipoli, operations remembered for chaos and casualties. But MacArthur has no choice. His beach defense gamble failed. Now he must salvage what remains. December 24, 1941 to January 6, 1942, the withdrawal to Bataan. It becomes one of the most successful retrograde operations in American military history, not because it was well planned, but because subordinate commanders executed brilliantly under impossible conditions. North Luzon Force, Wainwright's withdrawal. Lieutenant General Jonathan Wainwright commands 28,000 American and Filipino troops retreating 120 miles from Lingayan to Bataan. The Japanese 14th Army pursues aggressively. Every day, rearguard actions. Every bridge, a potential stand. December 27th, Wainwright establishes defensive line at Binalonan, 50 miles south of Lingayan, holds 24 hours, then withdraws. December 31st, defense at Bamban, 20 miles further south. American artillery, scarce and precious, delays Japanese advance. Wainwright reports, enemy pressure constant, Filipino units showing improved discipline under combat conditions. We are buying time. Buying time, that's the entire strategy now. Every hour of delay means more supplies reaching Bataan. Manila evacuation.
the logistics miracle. Quartermaster Colonel Charles Drake oversees Manila evacuation. Mission: move 10,000 tons of supplies 60 miles to Bataan in 10 days, while defending against air raids and managing refugee panic. December 24th to 31st, around-the-clock convoy operations. Trucks, rail cars, civilian vehicles commandeered. Food, ammunition, medical supplies, spare parts. But critical failures. Successfully evacuated. 2,000 tons food, mostly rice and canned goods. 1,500 tons ammunition, small arms, artillery shells. Medical supplies for 30,000 troops, 30 days. Left behind in Manila. 8,000 tons food. Warehouses too dispersed. Time too short. Fuel reserves. Demolition teams arrive late. Japanese capture intact. Construction equipment. Spare parts, winter clothing. The math is brutal. Bataan depots now contain perhaps 45 days of full rations for 80,000 troops. After that, starvation or surrender. Colonel Drake wrote later, "We were improvising every hour. No one had planned for this withdrawal because General MacArthur insisted it would never happen. We succeeded despite the lack of preparation, not because of planning." South Luzon Force. Parker's gamble. Major General George Parker commands 15,000 troops south and east of Manila. Japanese Lamon Bay force advancing towards him. Parker's problem: his force must march west around Manila, cross several rivers, then turn north into Bataan, all while Japanese troops are closer to Bataan than he is. If Japanese reach Bataan first, Parker's entire force gets cut off. December 28th. Parker orders forced march, 20 miles per day, abandon heavy equipment. Priority: get troops into Bataan alive. December 31st, race for the Bataan Gateway. Parker's lead elements reach Layak Junction, the entrance to Bataan, hours before Japanese reconnaissance units. January 1st, 1941, Parker's rearguard crosses into Bataan. Engineers destroy the last bridge behind them. The South Luzon force survives, barely.
January 6th, 1942, Bataan cordon closes. January 6th, 1942, 1800 hours. Final American Filipino units cross into Bataan. Engineers detonate demolitions, sealing roads behind them. The improvised withdrawal succeeds. Approximately 80,000 American and Filipino troops reach Bataan. 20,000 civilians follow, refugees, families of Filipino soldiers. Total, 100,000 people crowded onto a mountainous jungle peninsula 30 miles long, 15 miles wide. Japanese casualties during pursuit, perhaps 2,000 killed, 5,000 wounded. American Filipino casualties, 13,000 total. Killed, wounded, missing, deserted. MacArthur cables Washington. Entire force successfully concentrated in Bataan position. Enemy advance halted. We are prepared for protracted defense. It's technically true, but it omits context. The protracted defense depends on supplies that don't exist, reinforcements that can't arrive, and a relief fleet that won't come. MacArthur establishes headquarters on Corregidor Island, 2 miles offshore from Bataan, secure, fortress-like, separated from his troops by water. The decision to command from Corregidor rather than Bataan will haunt his reputation. Critics will call it abandonment. Defenders will call it military necessity. But the larger failure is undeniable. MacArthur's beach defense strategy collapsed in 72 hours. The fighting withdrawal to Bataan, the operation that would save 80,000 lives, was never his plan. It was improvisation forced by catastrophe. American press reaction. December 1941. Initial reporting treats Philippines disaster as part of larger Pearl Harbor shock. MacArthur's name rarely mentioned in a negative context. January 1942. As full scope of Clark Field and beach defense failures emerge, questions begin. Washington Post, January 10, 1942. How did American Air Force get caught on ground 9 hours after Pearl Harbor warning? Chicago Tribune, January 15, 1942. MacArthur promised Philippines could be defended. Where is that defense now? But MacArthur has powerful advantages. Advantage 1. He's the senior American commander in the Pacific Theater still actively fighting. Every other base, Wake Island,
Guam, Hong Kong falling faster than Philippines. Advantage 2. War Department needs heroes desperately. American public demands someone to rally behind. Advantage 3. MacArthur controls information. All press dispatches from the Philippines cleared through his headquarters. Negative coverage gets blocked. MacArthur's communiques emphasize heroic resistance, enemies suffering heavy casualties, troops in high spirits. January 18, 1942, Time magazine cover story on MacArthur. Headline: MacArthur, the Lion of Luzon. Article praises brilliant tactical retreat, saving thousands of American lives, defying Japanese imperial ambitions. The beach defense failure? Not mentioned. Clark Field disaster? Blamed on insufficient warning from Washington. MacArthur is being mythologized while his strategy is collapsing.
January 20th, 1942. Army Chief of Staff George Marshall sends private memorandum to President Roosevelt. Key passage: MacArthur's defense plan failed fundamentally. His assumptions about Filipino army capabilities proved wildly optimistic. His Air Force management bordered on negligent. However, his withdrawal operation demonstrated tactical flexibility. Recommend public support while privately limiting his strategic authority. Roosevelt agrees. The administration needs MacArthur as symbol more than strategist. February 9, 1942. Roosevelt orders MacArthur to accept Medal of Honor. The citation: for conspicuous leadership in preparing the Philippine Islands to resist conquest, and for the heroic conduct of defensive operations. Preparing the Philippine Islands to resist conquest, the operation that failed in 3 days, now treated as Medal of Honor-worthy achievement. Critics note, no other commander who lost half his Air Force on the ground and abandoned defensive positions within a week received a Medal of Honor. But Roosevelt's calculation is political, not military. America needs heroes. MacArthur, with his corncob pipe and dramatic rhetoric, fills that need. The escape order. By February 1942, Japanese forces tighten grip on Bataan. No reinforcements coming. Surrender imminent within weeks. February 22, 1942. Roosevelt cables MacArthur directly. You will proceed to Australia to assume command of Southwest Pacific forces. This is a direct order. MacArthur resists. Leaving his troops feels like abandonment. Politically, it looks like cowardice. But Roosevelt insists. Strategic logic. MacArthur is more valuable commanding future operations than dying in Bataan. March 11, 1942. 2,000 hours. MacArthur, his wife Jean, 4-year-old son Arthur, and 17 staff officers board PT boats for escape run to Mindanao, 400 miles south. The journey: 4 PT boats running Japanese blockade. Rough seas, 35-foot waves, 3 nights of open ocean travel. March 17th. MacArthur reaches Australia, delivers famous statement, I came through and I shall return. Left behind in Bataan, 78,000 American and Filipino troops. The contradiction is stark. MacArthur's failed defense plan doomed these troops. His improvised withdrawal saved them temporarily. His escape to Australia elevated him to supreme command. Catastrophe and reward intertwined. The Bataan Death March. April 9, 1942. Bataan defenders surrender. 78,000 prisoners. Japanese force them to march 65 miles to prison camps. No food, little water. Prisoners bayoneted for falling behind. Deaths during the march: 600 to 650 Americans, 5,000 to 10,000 Filipinos. Total deaths in captivity by 1945, 1,500 Americans, 26,000 Filipinos. When news reaches America in 1944, public outrage focuses on Japanese brutality. Few ask, why were these troops in Bataan in the first place? Answer: because MacArthur's beach defense plan failed, because his promised air superiority never materialized, because he rejected the original War Plan Orange strategy that might have positioned supplies properly. MacArthur would never publicly accept responsibility for the Philippines disaster. In 1951 congressional testimony, he blamed insufficient pre-war funding, Washington's failure to prioritize Philippines defense, Filipino troops' training deficiencies, and Japanese surprise and overwhelming numbers. All partially true, none addressing the fundamental failure. MacArthur's confidence exceeded reality. His plan was based on wishful thinking, not sober assessment. Primary source evidence. The full story of MacArthur's Philippines failure remained partially classified until 1974. War Department protected MacArthur's reputation during World War II for morale purposes. U.S. Army Center of Military History. Official History. The Fall of the Philippines by Louis Morton, 1953. First comprehensive account using War Department archives. Conclusion: MacArthur's beach defense strategy was fundamentally flawed. Withdrawal to Bataan should have begun December 8th, not December 23rd. MacArthur Monument Archives, Norfolk, Virginia, RG-2. MacArthur's personal correspondence, December 1941, March 1942. RG-10. War diary entries showing decision-making process. Notable: MacArthur's memoirs, Reminiscences, 1964, omit Clark Field details and mischaracterize beach defense as deliberate delaying action. National Archives, Record Group 407, after-action reports from Filipino Army divisions. Evidence: Filipino units often better trained than MacArthur acknowledged, but equipment shortages and officer quality varied wildly. Japanese military archives, captured 1945, translated, Lieutenant General Homa's operational plans. Japanese assessment, American defensive dispositions indicated overconfidence and poor understanding of our capabilities. The Clark Field controversy, most contentious historical debate. Who bears responsibility for Clark Field disaster? General Brereton's account, published 1946, MacArthur refused to authorize offensive strikes for 9 hours, leaving B-17s vulnerable. Sutherland's account, published 1956, Brereton never formally requested offensive operations, only suggested them. MacArthur's account, published 1964, never received Brereton's request. If he had, would have authorized strikes immediately. Historical consensus, based on communications logs, Brereton made repeated requests through channels. MacArthur's headquarters acknowledged requests but delayed authorization. Reason for the delay: MacArthur apparently uncertain whether U.S. or Japan was the formal aggressor. Roosevelt hadn't declared war yet. Legal hesitation met military reality disastrously. Military historian D. Clayton James, in The Years of MacArthur, Volume 2, 1975, says MacArthur's command indecision on December 8th revealed a leader psychologically unprepared for war, despite months of warnings. The Beach Defense Debate, a survey of 47 military historians, U.S. Army War College, 1988, agrees 89% beach defense plan was strategically unsound. 72% agree MacArthur overestimated Filipino capabilities. 51% agree immediate Bataan withdrawal, December 8th, would have saved more lives. 34% argue beach defense was politically necessary even if militarily flawed. The nuance: MacArthur faced impossible political constraints. Abandoning the Philippines without fighting would have devastated Filipino morale and American credibility. But the execution failures, Air Force destruction, supply positioning, intelligence assessment were avoidable. Declassification timeline. In 1946, basic after-action reports released. MacArthur's role presented positively. In 1953, Morton's official history challenges MacArthur narrative. The Army restricts distribution. In 1964, MacArthur publishes memoirs, defends all decisions, no acknowledgement of strategic failure. In 1974, War Department correspondence fully declassified.
Marshall's private critiques revealed. In 1985, Japanese archives show extent of surprise at American defensive collapse. In 2003, final Philippine Army records released. Filipino perspective documented comprehensively. Scholarly consensus, 2025. MacArthur's Philippines command represents a case study in confirmation bias, leader ignoring evidence contradicting preferred strategy, strategic overconfidence, assuming best-case scenarios, civilian-military tension, politics driving military decisions, crisis adaptation, brilliant improvisation, Bataan withdrawal, compensating for planning failure. Not simple incompetence, not criminal negligence, but dangerous combination of ego, optimism, and political pressure. Pattern recognition. Philippines 1941 fits larger MacArthur career patterns. The optimism cycle. 1. MacArthur proposes bold strategy. 2. Promises dramatic results exceeding available resources. 3. Dismisses critics as defeatist. 4. Plan encounters reality. 5. Improvises brilliantly when initial strategy fails. 6. Claims vindication despite fundamental miscalculation. Examples across career. Philippines, 1935 to 1941. Promise to build 400,000-man Filipino army. Deliver 20,000 partially trained troops. Korea, 1950. Incheon. Promise amphibious assault will end the war by Christmas. Succeeds brilliantly, then overextends towards China. Korea, 1950 to 51. Yalu River. Promise Chinese won't intervene. They intervene with 300,000 troops, nearly destroys 8th Army. The constant? MacArthur's strategic genius is real, but coexists with dangerous inability to accept limitations. Leadership lessons. Modern military education. U.S. Military Academy uses Philippines 1941 as a case study in Strategic Planning course, when confidence becomes liability. Teaching point. Best case planning ensures worst case unpreparedness. MacArthur failed to position supplies in Bataan because doing so admitted his beach defense might fail. Command and control seminar. The Clark Field decision. Teaching point. Hesitation in crisis compounds disaster. MacArthur's 9-hour delay on December 8th turned manageable crisis into catastrophe. Civil-military relations course. Political pressure on military judgment. Teaching point. Philippines beach defense politically necessary but militarily unsound. Leaders must balance strategic reality with political constraints. U.S. Army Command and General Staff College, Fort Leavenworth, MacArthur's withdrawal to Bataan remains one of the finest retrograde operations in American history, executed despite, not because of, higher command planning. Counterfactual analysis. What if MacArthur had authorized Clark Field strikes December 8, 4 a.m.? B-17s attack Japanese airfields on Formosa at dawn, damage Japanese air capacity significantly. American air superiority maintained for weeks. Beach defense plan becomes marginally more viable. Outcome? Philippines still eventually fall. Logistics, reinforcements impossible, but perhaps hold until mid-1942. What if MacArthur had withdrawn to Bataan December 8th immediately? No beach defense attempt. Supplies properly positioned in Bataan over 10 additional days. 80,000 troops potentially hold until August 1942. American morale suffers from immediate retreat optics. Outcome? Longer resistance, but same ultimate surrender. What if MacArthur had been correct? Filipino troops held beaches successfully. The Japanese invasion stalls for weeks. American reinforcements potentially reach the Philippines if Pearl Harbor fleet operational. MacArthur vindicated as strategic genius. Philippines potentially never falls. Pacific War trajectory fundamentally altered. Major General Charles Willoughby, MacArthur's intelligence chief for 30 years. The general possessed absolute belief in his own judgment. When reality contradicted that judgment, he changed his interpretation of reality, not his judgment. The Philippines disaster revealed this core trait. MacArthur never admitted beach defense was flawed. In his memoirs, written 1963, he described it as calculated strategic withdrawal to predetermined defensive positions. The actual cables, Declassified 1974, show different story: panic, improvisation, desperate orders to subordinates to hold at all costs positions that couldn't be held. But MacArthur's self-mythology served strategic purpose. Troops fighting on Bataan needed belief in ultimate victory. MacArthur provided that belief, even when he privately knew rescue was impossible. Was this leadership or deception? Perhaps both. 78,000 American and Filipino troops surrendered on Bataan, April 9, 1942. They were there because Douglas MacArthur promised he could defend the Philippines at the beaches. He was wrong. But the same man who misjudged Japanese capabilities in December 1941 would return to the Philippines in October 1944, fulfilling his famous promise. The same strategist who lost his air force on the ground would orchestrate the island-hopping campaign that destroyed Japan's Pacific Empire. The Philippines disaster of 1941 teaches uncomfortable lesson. Brilliant leaders are not consistently brilliant. Strategic genius and catastrophic miscalculation can coexist in the same mind. MacArthur's beach defense plan was delusional. His fighting withdrawal to Bataan was masterful. His escape to Australia was politically necessary, but morally complicated. History records all of it: the genius and the failure, the lives saved and the lives lost, the promises made and the promises broken. Douglas MacArthur wanted to be remembered as the man who defended the Philippines. Instead, he became the man who abandoned a failed strategy just quickly enough to save 80,000 troops for 3 more months of hell. Not the heroic narrative he preferred, but closer to the truth.